You're right. I think the Senator Graham had a gift for, getting along with people. He's, remarkably funny. He was, a very likable person. And so I think he could get along with other senators that maybe didn't agree with him 100%, 100% of the time. But, he was able to, disagree with people, but also be very collegial. And
The political landscape in Washington has changed dramatically following the death of U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham at the age of 71. One of Donald Trump's closest allies and one of the Republican Party's most influential voices, Graham's passing marks the end of a decades-long political career that shaped debates on foreign policy, judicial appointments, and the future of the GOP. In this video, we'll look at who Lindsey Graham was, how he became one of Trump's most trusted allies, and what his death could mean for American politics moving forward.
Now on the programme, we're going to cast our eyes overseas for a few moments because we learnt earlier this morning of the death of Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, a fixture on Capitol Hill for a quarter of a century and an influential and hawkish foreign policy voice in President Trump's ear, even though initially he loathed the man who would come to reshape Republican politics. Joining me now live on the programme is Greg Swenson from Republicans Abroad. Greg Swenson, it's great to have you on the programme today. This is very surprising news. I should say Greg Swenson is the chair of Republicans Overseas. Greg, this is very surprising news from Washington, D.C. It seems that Lindsey Graham died suddenly on Capitol Hill shortly after returning to Washington from a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine. I mean, his loss is not only going to be felt in Washington by his fellow Republicans and by President Trump, it's also going to be sorely felt in Kyiv, in Tel Aviv, and arguably in Tehran, because he was very supportive of both the Ukrainians and the Israelis, and he was very intent on President Trump overturning the Iranian regime, which, of course, up until now, he has not done. Good morning. What's your reaction to all of this?
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point, and I think you're right. I mean, he on two counts. One, he was a fixture in Washington, and surely a reliable conservative voice in the Senate and also in the party. He was definitely on the right side of the party, or the more conservative wing of the party, and the more hawkish wing. So yeah, I think he had a great influence on the president in terms of this Iran conflict, in terms of his support for Ukraine, and sometimes disagreed with the president, but that's okay. That's healthy. But I do think he was a great influence in U.S. foreign policy. That's for sure.
I mean, you talk about him being a reliably conservative voice. I mean, I can remember the halcyon days when Lindsey Graham and John McCain, the late senator from Arizona, were the best of mates and the closest of collegial allies. And of course, John McCain was cut from a very different cloth.
Yeah, you're right. I think the Senator Graham had a gift for, getting along with people. He's, remarkably funny. He was, a very likable person. And so I think he could get along with other senators that maybe didn't agree with him 100%, 100% of the time. But, he was able to, disagree with people, but also be very collegial. And I think, that was a kind of a throwback to the old days of the Senate. And I think that he'll be missed for that reason as well.
I mean, to the extent that he was an influence on President Trump, as I say, he was really driving President Trump to go all the way and overthrow the Iranian regime. Without that voice in Donald Trump's ear, he was very critical of the Memorandum of Understanding. I mean, he had to be talked down off the ledge by, I think it was either Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff. I believe Steve Witkoff had a long conversation with Senator Graham. I mean, the absence of that voice in Donald Trump's ear, do you think that makes it less likely that we're going to see fresh conflict against the Iranians?
I don't think so. I mean, I think the president listens to a lot of different voices or advisors and takes that advice. And he's, I think he's pretty well known for that. But I do think that the president ultimately makes his own decisions. He always tries diplomacy. He tried it even before the strikes on the nuclear facilities back in June of 25. He tried it before this conflict started. He's always tried to go to diplomacy first. And then I think when he went to diplomacy during the ceasefire, I think Lindsey Graham had just some vision that, maybe, and I think he's turned out to be right, that, you can't negotiate with the lunatic fringe of the regime. And so I think, but again, the president and Jared and Steve, we're sort of more prone to try diplomacy, even if it hasn't worked out.
Well, and the president is keeping the door open for that diplomacy to continue. Let me take you back to what happened in Ankara this week. A couple of quite extraordinary things that the president said back to back with one another. First of all, of course, his excoriation of the new leadership in Iran.
Is the ceasefire over? Is the ceasefire done? Is the MOU dead?
It's a very interesting question. To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people.
Now, he was seated alongside the NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte when he made those comments, and then he gestured to Mr. Rutte as he expressed frustration that he says he's experiencing at the hands of the Iranians.
Well, if I make a deal with him, we have a deal, and he goes out, he talks, we make a deal. Everyone's agreed. No nuclear weapon. We make a deal. They go outside, talk to the press. They say, we never even talked about it. There's something wrong with them. They're cuckoo.
I mean, that's a man, Greg Swenson, who's not going to be able to negotiate a deal with the Iranians because he doesn't have the diplomatic experience, guile or patience to bring it across the finishing line, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure I'd agree with that completely. I mean, the president's obviously frustrated, right? And as I said, he always wants to, he always chooses diplomacy first and then only uses military action or kinetic action when he's forced to, or when it's absolutely necessary.
Is that true? I mean, he chose kinetic action first against Venezuela, and he's basically in that clip there expressing frustration with the fact that the Iranians don't negotiate like his property mogul mates down in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, this isn't a business. I mean, there's a business aspect to it, of course, but this is a geostrategic nuclear deal that the first time around, the Iran nuclear deal, took years of really focused, detailed, specialized negotiations to bring across the line. He hasn't got the he's not got the appetite for it, has he?
Well, I think he does. I mean, the fact that he's not a career diplomat, I think is refreshing. The fact that he's got business people, working in diplomacy is a healthy thing. It's a good thing. And so I'm very confident in the president that he won't necessarily change his views because he doesn't have Lindsey Graham advising him anymore. I think he's, it's pretty clear that the lunatic regime, they don't really work on the basis of rationality. And I think that's what's frustrating the president. So unfortunately for the people of Iran, I think kinetic action is probably, inevitable at this point.
Except 3 weeks ago, President Trump was describing that lunatic regime as being made up of very rational people. I want to come back to the news of Lindsey Graham's death, but tie it to the fact that also missing from action in Washington, D.C., because he's, we believe, gravely ill, is Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. With those two votes not being available to President Trump, his insistence that the Save America Act, which he wants to pass in order to make sure that people have to prove that they are American citizens and provide ID when they vote in the midterm elections, there's no possibility that that's going to pass the Senate now, is there?
I'm not sure because Mitch McConnell voted against it, firstly. So that's not a missing vote. Yes, you're right. Lindsey Graham would be a key element to that. But I think he'll be replaced quickly because the governor in South Carolina will appoint a conservative senator, that's for sure. And so I'm not sure it changes the metrics too much on that. I think more importantly, we still have 2 or 3 other Republican holdouts for an issue that polls at 80. It's actually popular with Democrats as well. So it's frustrating, but I think...
Well, it's not that popular with Democrats. I mean, they voted against it in the House of Representatives.
No, the Democrat people, the people that vote for those same Democrats actually favor the bill. And so it's really a shame that you have the obstructionist Democrats, but then you have 4 senators who just have had issues with President Trump, including Mitch McConnell.
All right. Well, we don't have time at the moment, Greg, to discuss states' rights and the importance thereof as they run their own elections. But I'm very grateful to you for joining me on the program today. That's Greg Swenson, the chair of Republicans Overseas, reacting to the news today of the death of Senator Lindsey Graham, the sudden death of Lindsey Graham, an influential foreign policy voice in President Trump's ear. He died in Washington at the age of 71.
Whatever your opinion of Lindsey Graham, there's little doubt that his passing marks the end of an era in American politics. Over more than 2 decades in the U.S. Senate, he remained one of the Republican Party's most recognizable and influential figures, evolving from a vocal critic of Donald Trump into one of his closest political allies. The bigger question now is what comes next. How will Republicans fill the political and leadership gap left behind? Will Graham's influence continue to shape the party's direction? Or does this moment signal the beginning of a new chapter in American politics? As always, I'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think Lindsey Graham's political legacy will be, and how do you believe his passing could affect the Republican Party and the future of U.S. politics? If you found this analysis informative, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next political commentary. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.